Hey, what's up? This is a bit of a different video. I'm not playing any ADV laddering. Um, this comes from a really random moment that I had a couple weeks ago. I was setting up to record an ADV laddering video, but I like to, especially when I'm using going from Spotify to YouTube for background music, or if I have a fan in the background or something like that. I like to do an audio test first, where I just ramble about something for a couple minutes and just listen back to it. And it just so happens that at that time I happened to just be talking about nothing, and I mentioned eVTOL, and its role in Gen 7 Ubers. That's my favorite mod in the tier. And though that's not my first tier, I'm not a fairy Jenner by any marks. It happens to be the tier where I kind of really got into like competitive playing. I wasn't like, top ladder, but I had like 80% win rate. I was sitting in like the 1400s area. At my peak, I was still improving, but Gen 8 came through and I played Gen 8 and quickly became bored of Gen 8 and didn't want to go back to Gen 7 and then went right back to ADV instead. But that ramble that I had ended up lasting about 2 hours, and I kind of out the bug for Gen 7. I just want to talk about the meta because I think it's interesting. And Uber's metas are always interesting, right? Because power creep is insane. But I like Gen 7 specifically. It's the one that I know the most about, fortunately or unfortunately. And there was a decent amount of interest from like people I talked to about it that said this might be a video that would be interesting to watch, even if people don't play the gen, just to kind of get a sense of it. I really tried to do this by doing kind of like almost like a small dex entry for each mon. I mean, I'll show for a second. I have this here. Don't actually read it, it's not good, it's my personal notes. But it's a threat list, which essentially lists every mon in the tier, what it does, it's almost complete. But it does every mon in the tier, what it does, what sets it runs, what EVs or if the EVs matter, what EVs it runs, what checks it. And I think I have about 30 something mons on here. There's a couple more at the end that I didn't finish. There's 29 mons on it. And I have to do about 23 more if I wanted to complete it and make one that I felt was like good for Ubers. But Gen 7 ended kind of before I could complete it, and I didn't feel that it was really at that point, like, I wasn't going to use it necessarily. And I learned a lot by making it, which is why I made it, but I felt like I wasn't going to use it. People were going to use it because they moved on, so I kind of left it. But originally my plan for this Ubers video was essentially almost not in this order, but start by talking about Prima Brana, because that's the ADV tar of Gen 7 Ubers, and that's not even a unfair comparison to make. We'll get into it. Start with that and talk through what checks it, and by that and kind of flow through and work my way around the tier. And I did that. I did about 20 something mons of that. And it took 4 hours and I wasn't done, and I felt that that video would not be easily digestible, and that it's not a good way of actually teaching people about the tier. When people actually are kind of getting into it and they want to add a new mon to their team builder or check a new mon, going to something like that is useful, but in terms of starting, I think it'd be really useful. And I'm gonna still put that up probably. I'll probably break it up into like small, like 5-minute videos per mon and make a playlist or something like that. Because I think that might be more easily digestible. But instead, I thought that for this video, what I should do, I should probably get into it because I've been talking for like 5 minutes. Yeah. But what I'd do is I would just build a team. And this is a team I've used before, so I know what I'm building. Because I wanted to use a team that I felt was sound and not just make up something in my head that later, when I'm watching it back, I was like, this has a glaring Lucario weakness. So this is a team that I use. This is a team that I was chilling at 1400, almost 1500 with, after Gen 7. I peaked at like 1471, if that matters. But I mean, suffice to say that I played the tier sufficiently and I kind of knew what I was doing, especially near the end. So like my main team it's a balanced team, but we're gonna work through it, see how I got there. This is exactly the process that I had when I built it. And I've taken notes to help me make sure I don't forget anything and to make sure that it's easily digestible. But you might notice that as I go, I talk about the first mons, I might talk about them in a really large depth, but as I go to the last mons, I might talk about smaller niches. And this is because by the time I get to the last mon, I know that I want, let's say by last mon I need a stall breaker. So by the time I get to the last mon, I know I'm not going to look for this set or that, so I'm going to look for a specific set. And I might not talk about the other ones because they're not relevant in that situation. But I'm going to touch on them so that you know they exist. I just won't go into set detail necessarily. But I'm just gonna go through building it by talking about what I need to check and what I need to check and what I do check and how the synergies work. It'll kind of paint a picture of the tier through this team. And I might do this with another team in a separate video so that I come at a different angle in case this gives a little too narrow of a picture. But for now we're going to start. So because I want this team to be a good example of what SM and Ubers is, I'm required by law to start with Primal Groudon. It's really Groudon with Red Orb, but I'm going to use Primal for the situation because it Primals on the first turn immediately. So the thing about Primal Groudon, right? This is, when I say this is the ADV tar in the tier, I really mean that. Like if your team does not have an answer to tar, especially this is a team select gen. If you don't have an answer to Primal Groudon, it's like you legitimately forfeit a team select when you see one, and you should because it's most teams will have one. It's just so good. So first I'm going to talk about its stats, right? It's got 100 HP, which is pretty decent, a really good 160 defense, and a slightly weaker special defense, right? And its typing is Fire Ground. We'll talk defensive first. Fire Ground only has 2 weaknesses. It has a 2x weakness to ground, obviously, and a 4x weakness to water. Now you might say, especially if you know, Groudon and Kyogre, this is a glowing weakness, and you would be right. But this is where the ability of Groudon comes in. It's the ability to Desolate Land, and essentially it's EX Sun. It's like Sun, but Sun 2. Harsh Sunlight, it does not any bigger boost to your fire moves. It's the same boost as regular Sunlight. Morning Sun heals you for full health, Solar Beam charges in 1 turn, etc, etc. Where it differs from Drought is that any water move that is used while Harsh Sunlight is out, they say it fizzles. It will not hit, it will do 0 damage. What this means is that Groudon has turned its water 4x weakness into an immunity, and its only weakness is a 2x weakness to ground. It is immune to the other. It is either neutral to, it's neutral to at worst to the other 17 types in the tier, and it resists several of them. Especially some big ones like Fairy and Steel, which are really, it's one of the reasons poison isn't good in Ubers, but, I mean it's the main reason I should say. But these really big types that are important in Gen 7 metagame in general, are somewhat ignored by Groudon. So that's like its defensive utility. Now, I'm not we'll get into movesets in a second. I just want to talk about stats first. Speaking of stats, it has 180 attack and 150 special. Now don't let the fact that it has 180 in attack don't let that blind you to the fact that it has 150 in special attack, which is still more than most special attackers. Like it could attack from both sides of the spectrum very adeptly, and this is part of the reason it's threatening. So let's get into movesets, right? Moves that it has that are very important for the tier. Firstly, Dragon Tail is useful on stall teams, specifically to phase rank up Spike's damage. And also his dragons. The main defrag in this year is Guaranteed Origin, and it specs it for decent damage. It reduces the amount of times it can come in on Groudon, which it normally checks, and clear its Stealth Rocks. Speaking of Stealth Rocks, Groudon is a Stealth Rock setter that has winning matchups against every other Stealth Rock setter in the game. The other setters are, I mean, I should say every one of them, but it beats Arceus Rock, which is the Arceus form that sets rocks most often. It beats Excadrill, because Excadrill cannot get rocks up without dying, and it can't spin Groudon's rocks efficiently. It beats Dialga, if it's running Hidden Power Ice, it could beat Lando T, but Lando T is an OU mod that's actually fairly rare at Ubers. It beats Necrozma Dusk main in the 1v1. It beats Deoxys Speed, except for the fact that Deoxys Speed can instead of setting up spikes or rocks, with its Focus Sash turn, it can use Scale Swap and take your Harsh Sunlight and give you pressure back. You kill it the next turn, sure, but it gets rocks up on the second turn, and then you can't get your ability back, which means now you have a Fortress weakness to water. You don't have your Sun boost to boost your fire damage, and it makes you much worse of a mon. So Deoxys Speed is the only one you have to worry about because Skill Swap is always lurking. You also get T-Wave and Toxic for defensive sets. You get Earthquake, right? But you never run Earthquake because you run its signature move, Precipice Blades. Base 120 off 180 attack stat is nothing to scoff at all, and the accuracy drop it's there, right? But most you need to always run this because one of the reasons is that it secures 2 KOs that Earthquake cannot. For instance, with 0 attack investment and no plus attack nature, Primal Groudon can still secure 2 KOs on most if not all variants of Primal Kyogre with Precipice Blades, but it struggles with 3-hit KO with Earthquake. This reasons like that you run it. It also gets Stone Edge as rock coverage, which is really important. We'll get into that in a second. In terms of fire moves, it gets Fire Punch, but it barely uses it because of the low base power. It generally uses the special moves on the fire side of the spectrum, such as Eruption, Fire Blast, Lava Plume for the incredible burn chance, and Overheat for the nuke. And outside of that, it also gets what they call Double Dance, which is 2 boosting moves. In this case, it's Rock Polish for speed +2 and Swords Dance for attack +2. It has a with these moves, it has a wide range of utility, which allows it to play defensive support roles, offensive Double Dance look to sweep roles, breaker roles with just Swords Dance, S Dance, Stealth Rock sets. It can run mixed sets with, and also has Dragon Pulse. It can run mixed sets with Dragon Pulse, and Fire Blast. The only thing that's a guarantee on every set is Precipice Blades because you need it, and with 0 attack investment, it does what it needs to do. It also gets Rock Tomb for speed control, which is actually important. When you're facing a lead that's not a suicide lead and you get your rocks up, it's sometimes getting Rock Tomb up before you die can help your next mon come in and force that mon out, or in the late game can help look for a sweep against a mon who is now slower because of Rock Tomb. So Rock Tomb speed control is actually not up here, it's down here. But Rock Tomb speed control is actually important in this tier, and you will see it used. So that's really all in terms of moves. Now let's talk stats. So essentially, you can go offensive or defensive Groudon. Offensive, you can go like a kind of mixed one that runs stealth. It's like a kind of hybrid offense defense that runs stealth rocks, 1 dance move, the mandatory Pressy Blades, and Stone Edge. Or I think you can also run Rock Tomb. No, not these EVs. You need 52 special defense and hold on, let me get these. Need 52 special defense and 136 HP to survive. To have a +2 focus blast from Xerneas, Geo Xerneas, after rocks, because without rocks you survive it anyway. You take the rocks damage as base form Groudon before you primal reversion. And then with this HP, you also, without any defense investment, because it's bigger defense stat, you don't get O-code by Mega Salamence, add Mega Salamence after a dance, which lets you kill a Stone Edge. You need, this is an important number in this tier, 253, 254. 253 ties with the Cosmo Dust main, 254 beats it. And that difference, if you're slower than the Cosmo Dust main, it can set Rock Polish in your face, or set Sword Dance in your face, or set both if it comes in on if it comes on like HP Ice, it can, or if it comes in on a Stone Edge, which it resists, it can set Sword Dance, tank the Precipice Blades, set rock polish, and then sweep. So you need to see how to outspeed it. So that's one. And I think you just put the rest of the attack with adamant nature with this set. This attack set lets you 2 KO bulky Arceus forms like Arceus Water. You kill Arceus Rock because it's super effective, but Arceus Water, Arceus I think Arceus Steel as well. No, Steel's super effective. Arceus Water, Arceus most Arceus forms actually just most of the defensive ones lose defensive plates automatically. But Arceus Water is the big bulky one. It also is a defogger, so it's supported to 2 KO, and you can 2 KO unboosted with this much attack, adamant nature, and precipice blades. After Sword Dance, you can OHKO it. So this set is a hybrid set that will that looks to get rocks up in the early game on the Switch. To essentially play the rocks game until you wear their defogger down, because every defogger in the tier gets hit by rocks, and most of them, I think all of them not named Latias, I might be a little incorrect, but I think all of them not named Latias don't have recovery. So, and Latias is incredibly niche. So this means that I guess the Lando T is an OU mod that can run defog, so they get shut down. So essentially, a lot of Ubers is play the hazard game as hard as possible, because the main hazard move is not rapid spin, it's defog, which moves both sides hazards. So both of you are playing this chess game where it's like the checkmate is the defogger down, or their rocker down and the defogger up, either way. But most times you want to kill their stealth rocker and their defogger, which is why you never run both on the same mon. And once you get rocks up, that's when you start cranking damage, because everything in Ubers is so power crept that like most offensive mons also have some bulk on them. And rocks percent health damage actually does a lot to securing very important 1 KOs and 2 KOs. And so having rocks up is incredibly important, and you play this chess game where you just continue to pivot and play around rocks until their hazard removal is gone. There's only I think 2 or 3 sweepers in Ubers. It's Excadrill, the rare fortress. It's rare because this mod exists. Cloister exists because it beats all the suicide leads in the game, including Excadrill. But it's also very niche. So spin is really rare in this format, I should say. So this is a set you can run to kind of play like a hybrid role, where you like play early game, you play the hazard game, and if you live, you could look to bust through a wall, like Arceus Water, which walls physical teams usually with a +2 presence blades. I personally don't like this set. I don't like fast Groudon in general. I actually really hate fast Groudon. I'll talk about it when I get to slow Groudon. But I also just don't like it because generally by the time you finish playing the Hazard War, especially because most defoggers that are good, like UT are good because they check Groudon, it means that by the time even if you win the Hazard War, you're likely too worn down to break something later on. And it makes it kind of difficult for you to do your job. So I think that this match has to do everything a little too much. And I don't like this set necessarily. You can run rock polish sets that rock polish. Let's talk double dance first actually, since I'm here. Double dance runs this set. You can run fire punch instead of stone edge, which hits steel, celestial, and scarm. And it's a way to hit Lugia that doesn't have a 20% miss chance, even though Sun Edge does way more damage, even in Sun, because it's super effectiveness. And as a fire punch has a 10% burn chance, which can be really effective for destroying Lugia's multi-scale repeatedly. And with double dance, you run max attack, adamant. You need 156 EVs, which will beat Necrozma Dustmane when you're both at +0, when you're both at +2, etc, etc. Because Necrozma Dustmane can run double dance, and with 156 you always outspeed it. And you basically run 255 instead of 254 is because it means that you beat, after rock polish, you beat Mega Men's after Dragon Dance, which allows you to kill it with a Stone Edge. If it comes in on you. So if it comes in on you on your Rock Polish turn, you could take your Swords Dance on its Dragon Dance turn and still kill it, or you could just Stone Edge on its Dragon Dance turn and 2 KO it. Either way. This set's designed to sweep, of course. I still hate it because it's fast, and I have how fast Groudon, we'll get to that in a second. But it's better because it really wants to do one thing. It's not getting rocks up and trying to break. It just does a really good job at breaking. Essentially, the way you play Double Dance, not just Groudon, also when you get to my next mon, we're going to talk about Double Dance again. But when you come in on a mon, you check. If it's a slow bulky stall mon, you take your Swords Dance because you're gonna outspeed it anyway. You need to punch through it. If it gets a fast mon that you check, if the team is really fast, you go for a Rock Polish because whatever brings in to check you is going to be fast and usually frail. And so you're gonna punch through it anyway. You need the speed boost to outspeed. So that's really how you play Double Dance. You pick the boost you need to win that situation. If you get lucky, you can get both, but you're not gonna get both usually. You just pick one, and with 180 attack stat and 120 base power ground move, chances are high you only need one boost. Either way, you have enough defenses to tank a hit on the defensive side. You have enough offenses that you don't necessarily need a boost to punch a hole into something. So Double Dance is effective. You could also run mix set, like presses blades, fires. Oh, that's the only move that stays. You can keep Swords Dance, and you run like overheat. You only need to use it once anyway, and you actually run Rock Tomb instead. You run Rock Tomb or Stone Edge is because Rock Tomb is more accurate for one, and also beats it also slows on the swap, the checks that come in, because you're not running. Also, you go down in the Cosmo Dustbane speed. But Rock Tomb means that since you're not running Rock Polish, it helps you play the speed control game, which, as I said before, is really important. Overheat's a one-time nuke. Eruption. You can also run Eruption this slot. Eruption's a little bit more damage, but it's not as consistent because if I ever take a hit. Literally, if I'm at 95%, I think, then Overheat does more damage than Eruption. You can only use it once before it's a job. Because really, you're only gonna need it for one thing usually. When you say Swords Dance, they're gonna bring in their physical wall, and you hit it on the special side and it folds. But most times, you're just gonna be attacking on the physical side of the spectrum with a Swords Dance set, and this is really a surprise, a lure almost. They expect a Stone Edge, if they expect a Fire Punch instead of an Overheat, which is the reason that it's really good. This set does not run attack investment because you don't need it with a Swords Dance and a base 180 attack. Or you see Storm 152 to beat a Cosmo Dustbane because otherwise you will lose to it. Especially weakness policy in a Cosmo Dustbane, that's a mon. You run 144 special defense, which means you survive Geomancy Xerneas after rocks damage. You take the rocks damage. If it's your first time switching in is on the Xerneas, you're still base Groudon, you'll survive. You run 212, you run Maldature because you don't need the defense. You're so bulky. Rock Tomb also destroys Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh blanks your regular stab set, which is why Groudon, all the sets I've shown so far, run rock coverage. So there's even over fire coverage, because you need to hit Ho-Oh, who can otherwise win the game if it comes in a Groudon that it blanks. And Ho also has use as a defogger, even though it takes half its life off rocks, because it'll cover in a generator. You can Oko Arceus ground with a overheat, I think with high roll, and you can Oko Megameds after rocks. So there's that. So this set's also good. It's fast, and I don't like this, but it's very, very effective. Instead of Swords Dance, you can run Rock Polish. This set needs to hit reliably at special side, so it runs Fire Blast instead of Eruption, or Overheat. You run Fire Blast instead. Press Feast is mandatory. You don't run Lava Plume because you actually don't want to burn things when you play Groudon. Because all things that come in to check you, like the Bogus Arceus forms, they will thank you for burning them. because if you toxic them, they can't check you. They lose over time, because you gotta avoid most of the main stabs are ice beam, and you're avoiding the 3 KO, the 4 KO from ice beam because you're bulky. And so the only way, if they're burned, they can just continue to recover and wear you down. But if they're toxic, they can't check you. And so you don't actually want to burn them. So like lava plume is good damage at a high burn chance, but you don't actually want to burn. Even though the accuracy is good and all that. So you take fire blast. With your last slot, you can put HP ice, which hits Zygarde C, hits Mega Salamence, it hits Rayquaza. It hits the rare Lando T. Dragon Pulse is an option because most things I mentioned, Zygarde C, Mega Salamence, Rayquaza, they get hit with Dragon Pulse as well. Instead of 4 times, it's 2 times effective. But you also guarantee the Origin, which checks you. And with this you 2 KO it with max special defense, which is what the set runs. Rock Polish means you get your speed up on something that you force out, and you proceed to just sweep with it on the special side. It's actually a really good little set for physical walls because ground generally runs physical, and Pressy Blaze doesn't need any investment to KO Kyogre. This also means that you're not Blissey Food and Chansey Food because Blissey and Chansey are Uber viable. I think it might be Ubers by default, but they're definitely viable with Ubers. So now that I've finished talking about offensive sets, let's talk about the set that I'm going about, which is a defensive set, and let's talk about why I don't like reasons I don't like fast Groudon. So the set I'm gonna run, I'm just gonna put it out here first. It's a Stealth Rock set because you have really good matchups against all the Stealth Rockers, and with good default support, you can just continue to set rocks over and over again. Princess Blade is mandatory. Overheat is a very useful nuke, very useful nuke. And for those Arceus forms that I talked about before that want to come at a wall, you run Tox. You don't put anything in attack because you don't need it. You put Relaxed Nature, minus speed, also very important. Max HP, 56 in defense with a Relaxed Nature means that Necrozma Duskmane plus 2 Earthquake will never kill. Which means that you kill it back with a 2 KO Precious Blades. Which means that on the double, you beat it. Like I said, this doesn't, like, this ability to tank the Necrozma Duskmane and to come in and even check it if it's previously chipped is something that offensive sets cannot do. You put the rest of special defense because your job here is to, your resistances means that you check the biggest special attack of the tier, which is Primal Kyogre, and the second biggest, which is Xerneas. Both Xerneas sets will lose because Scarf doesn't hit hard enough and gets 2 KO'd, and Geomancy Xerneas can't OHKO after Geomancy Boost with Focus Blast or Ice Beam with 200 and max HP, which allows you to check the special threats in the tier. And you have enough defense to check the physical threats, like the Necrozma Duskmane at +2. The reason I like slow Groudon is because of Kyogre. It's not gonna play the team, but I just want to talk about Kyogre. The stats, if you notice, the stats are flipped. So instead of it has 180 special defense and 180 special attack and 150 attack, which is still insane. It switches the defenses, so it has more special defense and less defense. Same thing, right? But they have the same speed. Now, because Kyogre is generally needed to check different things, is a special defense, a special tank who still has electric weakness and still has a grass weakness and all that. It's allowed to check different things, and it generally has to run a little bit of speed. It's the only time you don't run speed is if you're running the Rest Talk set, which is very niche and is designed to soak status. But most times, for instance, the main set, which is the Calm and Water Spout set, runs max speed. You run max speed, but you don't run timid because timid means that you don't kill Ferrothorn. But you need max speed. You need max special attack modest, right? But even if you're not running max speed, most sets will creep a little bit. The defensive Rest Talk set doesn't because it just wants to soak status and scald you down. But every other set runs, if not max speed, then some speed creep. Like you come down to the crossbow speed and stuff like that, which is a very important number in this tier. Here's the thing: the way weather works, I'm not sure about every gen. I'm pretty sure it's the same thing in every gen, but especially in this gen, where the entire gen is kind of dictated around these two mons, which kind of thematic. We think about RSE, but the slower. So let's talk about this first. Desolate Land is a much better ability than Primordial Sea. Primordial Sea does the same thing, where summons rain, which is heavy, lasts until you switch out, and it's the same rain boost you normally get. And what it does is it means that fire attacks will not hit in the rain, because the rain is so powerful that it washes away the fire attack, whatever, right? The thing about this is that Groudon previously had a 4 times weakness to water, which now has become an immunity, which is a really big thing. But Kyogre already resisted fire type moves and had enough HP and special defense to tank the biggest fire type moves in the tier, which come from Groudon and are special. So this ability doesn't actually do much for it in terms of its defensive utility. That being said, the reason that Primordial Sea is useful is because if Primordial Sea is up, Groudon is threatened out, because that was Fortress weakness is super exacerbated, and even the most defensive Kyogre can OHKO you with Scald. So back to the reason that slow Groudon is just better than fast Groudon in my opinion. The only reason that Kyogre cannot be used as a lead is because in the lead matchup, the slower mon's weather will be the one that sticks. If you run fast Groudon at 152 to outspeed the crossbow, not only are you tying with Kyogre, sometimes you're outspeeding because you went 255 to beat +1 Mega Salamence, which Kyogre does not worry about. So now Kyogre's rain is up, and you on the double, on the lean matchup, etc. After U-turn that kills, stuff like that, you can't bring Groudon in to check Kyogre. Like somebody U-turns in Kyogre, you can't bring Groudon in. Well, still and that, as well as the fact that having a fast Groudon means that suddenly Kyogre can play the lead matchup, is insane to me. I think the ability of slow Groudon to always underspeed while still being the same things that fast Groudon beats, but there's 2 ways to check him on: to tank its hit and to hit it back and to KO before it KOs you, or to outspeed and not either hit at all and still kill it. The thing is, a lot of mons in this tier, like for instance Xerneas, who has 97 speed, it's gonna outspeed you anyway. Matter of fact, on Geomancy sets after at +2, or a lot of things that you want to check are gonna outspeed you anyway. It's not you could beat a crossbow just without outspeeding it, and by not outspeeding, you ensure that you will always beat Kyogre on the double. Kyogre cannot switch in on the double. Kyogre cannot play turn 1 if you see the Groudon in, because of slow Groudon. So I like slow Groudon much more, which is why we're running this set. Stealth Walk is because I beat so many Stealth Walkers in the tier, especially with investment into my HP. It allows me to set Stealth Walks on the 4 swaps. Princess Blades is mandatory. 2 KOs Xerneas, Primal Kyogre without investment, which reduces, which allows you to come in and check them. Overheat is gonna do what it needs even without any special attack investment. With 150 special attack in Sun, for instance, it means that Arceus Ground can switch in on you. Arceus Ground normally runs a little defensive. It can eat the Princess Blades and be fine and hit you with a Toxic and then recover, for instance. But with Overheat, it can't do anything more because Overheat puts it in a Pressy range, so it has to recover on the turn it switches in, for instance. Princess Blades also can't OHKO Marshadow 100% of the time. Overheat can. And Mega Salamence doesn't care about Princess Blades, but Overheat puts the pressure on it. Um, Stone Edge is not really an option with this set necessarily because it doesn't hit hard and it doesn't do what it needs to do. Toxic is useful to beat those walls like Arceus Water that coming on it, and defoggers like Arceus Water, Giratina Origin, even Lando T, Latias. None of them. There's no defogger in the tier that really wants to eat a Toxic. And no rocker either. The only rocker that doesn't care about Toxic is Dialga and Excadrill. And both of them are put in serious jeopardy by Princess Blades. So this is a really good set that's really rounded out. And again, Overheater Lava Plume because I don't want to burn things. So here's the deal. Now that I have Groudon, let's take on next steps. What do I need that I have Groudon? Now Groudon's main weakness is that it's forced to run Red Orb, right? Which means that I don't have recovery and I get chipped out specifically by status and by hazards. Also the ground weakness is it's similar to Swampert, where Swampert's one weakness is grass, so grass appears at ADV a lot because of Swampert, and it's like a self-defeating prophecy type deal. It's very similar for Groudon, which only weakness is Groud, but as such Groud is actually decently popular in terms of mons who will run EQ or the rare earth powers to catch Groudon specifically. So I need something that deals with that a little bit. Also, I need any answers to status and hazards to avoid me getting chipped, like I said, and I need answers to there's certain mons that will not care about my fire damage, like Lando T, and that are immune to Earthquake. Lando T, Rayquaza does a decent job. It doesn't really want to eat the overheat, but it can eat it and set up. Also, I need a Groudon check for other Groudon, especially Toxic Groudon, and I need a setup sweeper because some people use Groudon as their setup sweeper with double dance, but I'm not. So a way to deal with with all these flying mons is with Stone Edge, which Groudon normally runs, but we can work to check Groudon, especially fast Groudon. We need multiple checks. It's like Tar, you can't have just one check. So one light check we can use is the Crossbow Duskmane, which also carries Stone Edge. The Crossbow Duskmane is the next one of this that I want to talk about, and I personally like it a lot. Let's talk stats first. Actually, let's talk ability first. The ability is Prism Armor. Prism Armor means that Necrozma Duskmane will not take super effective damage. It was like other monsters do. It takes 3/4 damage, which is important because it's weak to both fire and ground, and this allows it to not just die right away to Groudon. It won't check Groudon necessarily unless it's double dance and already has a rock polish up or gets a rock polish up on the switch, etc, etc. But this allows it to not be Groudon food and to actually pressure Groudon as Groudon switches in and chip it down slowly because Groudon does not have recovery. Now let's talk stats. 97 HP is it's not bad at all. 127, it's frailer defensively than Groudon. It's a little more bulky on the special defense side. It's slow, which is one of the reasons that double dance is useful on it, which because that +2 can start catching stuff like Mega Salamence and stuff like that. But its attack stats kind of where it shines. 157 attack is not bad, and has a lot of really good attack options. We'll get into a second. Special attack is also not bad. I don't want Ultra Crossbow because Ultra Crossbow stops checking stuff. Like when you Ultra, you stop checking. You lose your toxic immunity. You trade your fairy resist for a fairy weakness. You can't use your big Ultra Burst move on the Turning Transform anyway, and there's a lot of mons that resist it because it's like a psychic type move. I'm pretty sure. It's like nuke. It's switch based power, but I mean, there's a lot of dark type mons in this tier, especially like Yveltal. That's the main one. And it also like just picks up Gengar weaknesses and stuff like that is bulky enough to resist before because Ultra Necrozma is frail. I mean, it's not frail. It's 97 in defense and HP and special defense, but in Ubers that's frail. So I don't want ultra crossbow. I want this crossbow. Let's talk sets. So one of the main sets people use that's kind of picked up popularity is a trick room set. You want trick room, sword stance. You don't need rock polish because trick room. And Sunsteel Strike. It's a signature ability which has 100 base power. It's the highest. It's a really it's like a really high base power steel move. I think it's the highest base power steel move out at this time. There's moves that are out now that doesn't cost health, etc. Because I know Steel Beam is out now, but that costs half your health, and I don't know. I don't play Gen 8, but it ignores abilities of other mons. So if there's a mon with sturdy that gets O code, it'll get O code. I can't think of any off the top of my head. If there's a mon that has like iron barbs, you will get iron barbs because this move makes contact but ignores their ability. Stuff like that. Mons that have like Corvus' mummy will not affect it, etc. But this is the main stab. It's a beautiful move that Oko's Xerneas allows you to check fairies, especially alongside its signature Z move, Solganium Z, which boosts your Sunsteel Strike into a searing Sunray Smash that does incredible damage and is capable of destroying teams completely. Searing Sunray Smash, I think like Oko's Mars Shadow even, and it also ignores abilities once again. And it has a 200 base power and everything. Like it's a disgusting nuke. And you could use it. You use it as your nuke with the Z move. It goes without investment on Mars Shadow. That's the important calc. Earthquake lets you hit Kyogre other Crossbow DM. Lets you hit Primal Groudon because Primal Groudon otherwise it resists Sunsteel Strike, which is your main stab move. You obviously would run, in this case, run 0 speed IVs. You run max HP, max attack, and you put the rest of defense either way. And you run plus attack or Brave Nature, which is plus attack minus speed. Yeah. This set's good, but doesn't do what I want it to do necessarily. In this team, what I want this mon to do, I don't want it to check Groudon. I want it to pressure Mence. I want it to take a little pressure of Groudon to check Xerneas. So I want it to run kind of tanky. I still want it to go to Swords Dance, and I want it to not completely fodder against Groudon because it will never get the dance up. In terms of other sets, it could run a Spadeffi set. Which is pretty much the other option. That set runs Stealth Rock, it's a rock setter, Toxic, SD, and it could run. Actually, it runs. It doesn't run both Toxic and SD. It runs Toxic or SD because it needs Sunsteel as the stab, and it needs Swords Dance, and it needs Morning Sun. Morning Sun is the recovery for this set, which can run leftovers or Solganium Z still. This is always an option, especially with Morning Sun. Morning Sun will heal half your health in regular weather, heal a quarter of your health under Kyogre's Rain, and will heal your whole health in Groudon's Sun. This is very useful because it allows you. It's not the set I'm running because this is the sped F version of this set, which runs max HP, max special defense, a little bit of defense, and careful nature. But I wanted to check Salamence and Ho-Oh and Rayquaza. So instead, I'm going to run the defensive version of this, and I'm going to run, instead of Stealth Rock, I'm going to run Stone Edge. Stone Edge is useful because it hits Salamence, hits Rayquaza, it hits Ho-Oh really hard. I'm running Solganium Z over leftovers because of Morning Sun. And Morning Sun is a really good bit of tech for the Crossbow Deathmane because it allows you to play your game, and if you ever read Groudon's gonna come in to check you, you just Morning Sun, you heal your whole health, and you can switch out after, that's fine. and switching your check, but allows you to turn. It allows you to still gain a little bit momentum back from your lost momentum by getting checked. If that makes sense. Normally, when a ground comes in on a crossbow dustbin without Morning Sun, you lose momentum because you have to switch out and it gets to do what it wants. It gets to set its rocks, it gets to do its whatever it wants. If you have Morning Sun and you get to beat on the switch, you can gain momentum back because even though you're switching out, you're losing momentum. But your crossbow dustbin is at full HP now. That could be very useful. Also, my nature's wrong. I need. I can't read. Impish nature, there we go. Oh my god, I'm sorry. I was looking for it. I need to put the rest of special defense. Doesn't matter. This is that I want to run. Stone Edge with no investment will still hit like a truck. Still put 2 KOs on Rayquaza, on Salamence without Intimidate. It will still Oko Hole. After a dance, you're looking for Okos, etc. Sunsteel Strike hits everything else pretty much. What only resists it is the fire types. So like this is not gonna resist it, does not check Groudon, but like I said, I don't want to. I can play around Groudon very differently. Now I've compelled to weaknesses a little bit, in that I have a ground weakness on both Mons. And also there's a lot of physical walls that don't necessarily care about my attacking types. I should also mention that if you want to run this set differently, I never actually talk about the moves on this Mon. You can run EQ, I mentioned that. But you could also run knockoff on Stally teams. I don't recommend it. Iron has a decent option, but for flinch chance, but I also like Sunsteel is just better. Photon Geyser is it's a special move here, but if you have more special attack, it becomes physical. It also ignores abilities, so that's an option for you. But you could also run Zen Headbutt, which is where is it? They don't have it here, but you could just want to learn Zen Headbutt. You can run that for the flinch chance. You could run Two for Toxic. X's is very niche, I don't recommend it. You can Rock Slide. You can Rock Tomb for speed control once again. So you have options, but I think this is like the best set for my team. So I still need Hazard Control. I'll compile the weaknesses for ground. So I need a ground check that checks Groudon specifically, because that's the big ground type of the tier. So my set of super I'm gonna pick last. I need to answer to stuff like defensive Arceus forms, even though I can beat them with Toxic, etc. That takes a while, and they will continue to defog me in the meantime. So I kind of need something that pushes progress on them a little harder. I need something that checks Guaranteed Origin, because that's the main defogger, and also checks Groudon. I need something that checks like a max defense Rest Talk Kyogre. I need something that checks Zygarde Complete. So those are the physical walls that don't care about my attacking type so far. So I'll take care of a couple of these with my next Mon. The best Hazard Control in the tier, I've talked about it a couple times, so you probably know what's coming. It also checks Problem Groudon, and it deals with some of these physical walls really well. So we're going to talk about Guaranteed Origin, which is such a beautiful, beautiful Pokemon, right? So let's talk about Levitate's part of its ability. Levitate's ability, which is part of its niche today. The reason that it's important is because it means that since you resist its Fire Stab, Groudon's Fire Stab. You still eat a couple Stone Edges without problem. And now you press this Blaze, which is its big mandatory move. It's not gonna hit you as hard, because it's not gonna hit you at all actually, because you're levitating, right? It has really solid bulk, 150 HP, 100 in both defenses, which means that you can switch it on a lot of mons. It's immune to trapping, bar pursuit, because it has levitate, which floats Rainier Trap, and ghost types are immune to Shadow Tag and Mean Look in this gen. So that's pretty good defensive utility. It also gets defog, which is the main reason to run it. It has a choice of all 3 statuses down here. Also, it has 120 both attack stats. The special attack is more useful because Creative only has one wheel set, so I'm just gonna play it as I go. You run Defog, your Jagged Stab, which could be a Draco Meteor, Jagged Pulse, or Jagged Tail. On really stally teams, you run Jagged Tail to rack up rocks damage. Draco Meteor, the choice between Draco Meteor or Jagged Pulse depends on what you need. I personally prefer Jagged Pulse because I think that Draco Meteor forces you to switch out, and I need this much to hang on and check stuff. And in addition, I feel Jagged Pulse still echoes Megaments anyway. So I think Jagged Pulse is style of choice. You pick a status of choice. Here's the deal. The status is actually an interesting situation. So this mod is important because it's a default that checks Groudon, right? And the only status that hits a Groudon is Toxic, because it's a ground type and a fire type. So this is the other statuses. But if you have Toxic support for other monsters on your team, which I will have, I'm drafting more and I already have Toxic on my Groudon to check out the Groudon, it's actually better to run Thunder Wave, because Thunder Wave destroys Xerneas, both Xerneas sets, because it forces Scarf Xerneas to lock out to Aromatherapy. It forces and it destroys Geomancy Xerneas because suddenly it's stuck at base 97 speed. It doesn't get its boost, suddenly things that weren't checked before. Excuse me, things that were checked before switch in and check it. So Thunder Wave is actually really, really powerful if you have toxic support in the rest of your team to hit Power Groudon. And then your last move is Hex. Hex is a cute move. It's base 65 power, which is not that crazy, right? But if the previously status, it doubles. So it's base 130. Actually, because of Grizzly's Orb, which gives you 1.2 attack boost if you have under your stabs, it's a base 156 move off 120 special attack stat. So it hits like a truck. It 2-hit KOs Probo Groudon and Probo Koger with zero resist damage, and it destroys those Arceus forms that were looking at the wall earlier. So it'll help you punch holes in the physical walls that are problematic for my mon so far, right? You can, if you were not feeling it, and I legitimately cannot imagine why you wouldn't be, you can run Shadow Ball. But I think it's always better to run Hex, because you could, in the Hazard War, all the defoggers, the weakness is status. Most of the rock setters' weakness is a different kind of status. Status is a large part of the early game. I don't want to make comparisons to like early gens, like RBY and the Paralysis metagame that's there, but it's something similar, where certain mons are going to get status, you have to play around it, you don't want to get your Tauros paralyzed, stuff like that, right? It's kind of similar, in the sense that like everybody's game plan against Groudon is on some level to Toxic it, and so you have to play around that in some way, especially with Team Preview, where they know you have the Toxic check for it. So there's a bit of a mind game there. But because status is going to come down, Hex is always the best option. And you need defog. Your job is essentially, in the early game, you come in on something you check, you force a swap, you defog on the swap, get rid of their rocks, you status whatever comes in, or if you need swap, you swap, and you just do that over and over again. It's not uncommon on Gyarados Origin teams with good support to at some point have all 6 members of their team status one way or another, and Hex starts blowing holes in their team. Speaking of EVs, speaking of blowing holes, to not get holes blown in you, I'm sorry, you run 248 HP, and you run 52 Speed F. This means that if Groudon hits you with 2 full power eruptions, 2 base 150 moves off a 150 special attack stat in Sun, you'll survive both of them. Now, again, this won't happen because Groudon should be status, Groudon should be taking damage. You hit Dragon Pulse if you don't have your status yet. But either way, it should be taking chip repeatedly, so this situation will not come up. But you do need to be aware of this because, like Groudon, you don't have an item, so you're prone to getting chipped out. You put the rest special attack with a biased nature to ensure you get the 2 KOs that you need. Oh, sorry, let's be 208, yeah. I missed 4 here. You want to odd numbers, so you take less than 50% from. Odd numbers are important because it means that you recover more than 50% of your HP because it rounds because a recover rounds up, or because stealth rock rounds down, you take less than 25%, less than 50%. In this case, less than 12% from rocks, stuff like that. So the odd number game you'll see come up a couple times. And this is all you need. You run modest nature to ensure you get the 2 KOs that you're looking for, and this is the set. Now I've gained a weakness because my only way to check Mars Shadow right now is to blow my Z move on it. Also, let's talk about Mars Shadow real quick in case if you haven't played Jet 7, you don't know about the terror this mod is. This mod is actually horrifying. So first look at stats. 135 in attack and speed means that it's a decent wall breaker. That's Technician. Now that he does have Technician, it gains moves like it gains Pursuit, Rock Tomb, which is a speed control move that's now a base 90 speed control move. It gains Shadow Sneak, so you get priority on hitting for 60 base power. You could run Feint, I don't recommend it. Force Palm is kind of troll because even without Technician, you still, and same thing with Roll Kick is the same thing as Force. But the thing about Mars Shadow is that not only do you have those low base power moves that are boosted, and you get the utility as well, but you still get Drain Punch, you get Close Combat, you get Shadow Claw, you get I'm missing something that's important. Knock off, you get Outrage if you need it for dragons, but you shouldn't. You get Focus Punch. You get Superpower, that's what I was looking for. Superpower is the big one that you could use very often. But the really important part, the main set's Life Orb. You run Life Orb, you run Close Combat, Ice Punch for dragons, you can run Bulk Up if you want it, Rock Tomb, or you could run Rock Tomb or Pursuit, depending what your team needs. Last move, Special Thief. Special Thief is a base 90 power ghost physical move, which is the highest base power of any ghost physical move that's not a 2-turn move, and being Shadow Force. But not only is it a 90 base power physical move from about 125 base power, when it hits you, not only does it take your all your positive stat boosts, it removes them from your Pokemon haste style, right? But not only does it do this, also it does this through sub. Even if it hits your sub, it'll pull your positive attack boost off you, leave with the negative ones. Not only does it do this, but it gets the boost in return. So if you set up 4 curses and Mars Shadow hits you with Special Thief, you're still -4 speed, but now Mars Shadow is +4 attack and +4 defense instead. Also gets Bulk Up, so you can just do that itself if it ever gets a chance. But not only this, but when it takes those boosts, it takes the boost and applies them retroactively as Special Thief before it hits. So not only did you lose +4 attack and defense, but you get hit with a +4 Special Thief when it wasn't boosted when it first hit you. This makes it a really good revenge killer, especially with stuff like Shadow Sneak and Pursuit. It makes it very good at beating certain mons like the Necrozma DM will only beat Mars Shadow with a Sunsteel Strike if it has a Swords Dance already. Because if it's Swords Dance already, Mars Shadow is faster. It will go first, Special Thief, take your Swords Dance boost, and hit you with a super effective Ghost type move, and OHKO you, even through Prism Armor. So that's a problem. Groudon can kind of almost check it because it can't eat 2 Princess Blades, but Mars Shadow hitting it hard with a Special Thief, or with a Close Combat specifically, or Superpower you pick, is not good for the longevity of a Groudon. And it will 2-hit KO. It will 2-hit KO Groudon before Groudon 2-hit KOs it, especially with Rocks damage. So I need a way to check Mars Shadow, especially because I've just added a Ghost weakness to my team. So there's that. Also, I need something that dissuades Mega Gengar from switching in. I typed Mega like it was just gonna give me Gengar, because Mega Gengar has Shadow Tag, which means that you cannot check Gengar. Because the definition of a check is something that comes in on you and kills you before you kill it, or forces you out. Nothing comes in on Mega Gengar because of Shadow Tag. Not only this, Now I notice I have a higher attack stat than Groudon has 170, 130 speed, which is one of the fastest ones in this here. This is really crowded on base 90, by the way, which is one of the reasons that outspeeding Necrozma max speed is just, stuff like that. Like that's kind of where the tier is crowded between 250 and 306 ish. Which you outspeed without any investment, not to mention when you put all your investment in it. Notice I have these crazy stats, but the move pool on this mod is insane. You can, like, here, I promise you, if you build 6 mons, your team will beat Mega Gengar depending on the set it runs, and will lose to Mega Gengar depending on the set it runs. I'm not gonna read directly here. I'm gonna read off my notes, because I have it organized really well in my notes, I think. Okay, so it's got utility moves, it's got offensive moves, it's got defensive moves. Let's talk about it. So in terms of offensive moves, it gets Shadow Ball, it gets Sludge Wave, it gets Focus Blast, it gets Thunder, it gets Thunderbolt, it gets Hex, it gets Sludge Bomb, it gets Dark Pulse, it gets Dazzling Gleam for Fairy Stab, it gets Sucker Punch for Priority, Energy Ball, Giga Drain, it gets Psychic, it gets Venoshock, which is Hex but for poison type moves. So it's really difficult to predict it on the physical side. And also, it's one of the reasons Rapid Spin is not good at this tier, because Gengar will come in at your Rapid Spinner on the turn it spins and trap it. Imagine the ADV if Gengar had Arena Trap. It's really essentially that. It's terrifying, right? And one of the main supers of the tier, which is Sorzan 16 Speed Arceus, gets blanked. Which will I think one of the reasons it runs Shadow Ball. Or Shadow Claw, but even still is not enough. So there's that. It also soaks Toxic Spikes in Toxic, which is why it's used on anti-stall teams. But it also gives you a really big supportive move. It gets Ice Ceiling for speed control, Taunt to destroy stalls, Sub to abuse mons that have to switch out or are taunted. It's Will-O-Wisp. It gets Destiny Bond to force trades, especially with Taunt. That set, the Taunt D-Bond set is terrifying. It gets Disable. It gets Perish Song, so it can trap you, and it gets to trap it automatically. It doesn't need to mean luck you anymore. It gets Protect, it gets Confuse Ray, it gets Foul Play to destroy physical mons, Haze to destroy setup, Infestation to guarantee % health chip damage, it gets Pain Split to act as pseudo heal, it gets Psych Up to copy boost before it removes it with Haze, Swagger Ruin special offense, it gets Toxic, it gets Trick Room to if it plays low speed, it'll destroy mons that run fast, like 306 mons. So you could beat the Shadow Ball Sludge Wave set with a steel types or whatever, but you lose to a Hex. You maybe lose to like a Will-O-Wisp Hex set, or you lose to a D-Bond Taunt set, or a Perish Song Sub Disable set. Like, it's very difficult to check Gengar, but you can make Gengar afraid to come in because it's really frail and doesn't have Levitate anymore. So it can't come out on Groudon because it's afraid of Pressy. You need to continue to pressure it in that way. So I'm going to check that eventually. Actually, I'm going to check it right now. One of the ways to check it, I'm going to use an OU mod actually, but I think it has a really good niche, and that's Landorus Therian. Now here's the thing about Landorus Therian. Landorus Therian has 145 attack, which is very decent, especially for an OU mod. Which means it's really hard with no investment. It has a really good move pool, we'll talk about that in a second. It has a decent defenses, a little more defense, special defense. It's kind of weak on the special defense side, which is unfortunate because of its 4 times ice weakness. Its speed is 91, which means that it beats all the base 90s. Because they sit at 306 and it sits at 309. With full investment. Which I don't necessarily run. But not only this, but it gets Intimidate, which means that its base 90 defense is actually not that bad. Because Intimidate will weaken stuff and allows it to check things on the swap. Now, it gets really good moves. For instance, the main draw of Landorus Therian is U-turn. It hits like a hidden power bug, right? But then immediately feels physical. But you switch out after, which removes the need for prediction. You see what I'm saying? I'd have to guess on the double, because if you switch out and I switch in and I U-turn, I can see what you switch, and then it's like baton pass, but I do damage still. So there's that. It means that I'm not taught. Like taught doesn't remove my ability to pivot. So that's the first part of it. I'm actually good about Scarflander because I really love Scarflander. Scarflander outspeeds every mon except, I mean, if you go max speed, it outspeeds every mon except for the access speed, unboosted at least. I won't run that fast. I'm going to run 125 speed EVs actually with a jolly nature. 120. Am I trolling? 124. Sorry, I can't count. This allows you to beat everything that's based up to base 140 speed, which means that the only things you lose to in terms of speed, you don't like flat lose to that, but the only thing that you're not fast enough to be is Pheromosa. If you want to be Pheromosa, you run 212 and you outspeed Pheromosa, which is the same speed as the access A. So but you still will lose the access speed at this point. You cannot speed it no matter what, because the access speed is a base 150 speed and it runs max speed. But so I just run down to 124. Which after start off we have 409 speed, which beats the base 140s. The base 140 that you really that I guess the only base 140 that's really in the tier is Mega Mewtwo Y, which is problematic. Oh sorry, hold on, I'm tripping with my shoes off. I need 140 EV, that's 124. I need 140 EVs to beat it. You should do one wrong with my calc. Because I have 417 speed. Yeah. I forgot with timid you don't need all that, but I said without timid you don't need all that. But because Mega Mewtwo Y runs timid, you need 140 EVs, which is actually important. I forgot to mention that. Mega Mewtwo Y is actually fairly rare, but if you're gonna run fast enough to outspeed it, then I mean, really the fastest thing you have to worry about is the base 140, the base 130s, but you don't lose much by going up to 140, and it helps you deal with certain things that are scarfed below you, like Scarf Kyogre is now slower than you, etc. Or Scarf Kyogre is not max invested, it's slower than you now. Or max speed Tibet 130s, like 130. I think Meds 130. Oh, and Jolly Nature. I mentioned no. I was right. Hold on.
Lucy found something too. Dad, I found a joint in Mom's dresser drawer.
I forget to calculate nature. I'd be really upset if I was calculate nature and I was actually right with 124. I'm going to apologize real quick and just check it. Calc is broken. Oh boy. This is wasting time. I apologize. I just want to make sure I get it right before I say something stupid. And that happens a lot. Custom set. Yeah, I calculated Jolly. I was not incorrect. It's 140. I apologize for the delay. But yeah, 140 beats everything up to Deoxys and Pheromosa, who's the faster U-turner, but that's fine. Especially with Intimidate, she's not gonna put too much on you. You need 124 attack because that's how 124 came from. I'm so sorry. I knew there's a reason that I had 124 on this because I had 124 attack EVs to KO Necrozma after rocks with Earthquake, the Spidefi set. I run mine defensive, but most of the Necrozma are special defensive to check fairies and stuff. And they get 2 KO'd by Earthquake, which is the style move of choice for this set. Let's put the rest in HP. So you can take both sides of the spectrum. You can creep into either defense. Remember that you have a higher defense stat and that you have Intimidate, so you actually cut defensive on the physical side. But you can like creep down somewhere and then throw some split FEVs on. I prefer to put all in HP. But there's that. Now, the other two moves on this are going to be Stealth Rock, because it's good to have a secondary rock setter if I make a misplay or they have really good prediction and I lose my ground early and the defogger is still up. I can play as though I don't have rocks on my Lando, because Lando can run a lot. It can run HP Ice for other Lando and Dragons. It can run Earth Power on a special set, which is not that good, but it can run Defog on it. It can run Defog and play the defogger role. It can run Rock Polish, look for sweeps. It can run Swords Dance to go double dance. It can run Stone Edge. It can run Toxic, so they don't actually know what I'm running. So I don't have to play as though I have rocks until their defogger is dead. So it gives me insurance. Speaking of insurance, it's not as good as ADV, but I really like Scarf Boom. I mean, it allows me to destroy frail threats that are like looking to set up. I won't like. For instance, is Xerneas lacking Ice Beam? If like, oh shit, he's gonna get the Geomancy, I can bring a Lando on it. It'll outspeed me, sure. It'll tag me with Focus Blast or with Moon Blast. I will not die with this much HP, especially if I creep into special defense a little bit. And then I will kill it back with Explosion. Explosion allows me to trade 1-for-1 at any moment, and it's useful to break through walls. Even on the big tanky boy Zygarde, complete max HP, max defense, impish Zygarde, I do 50%, which is important because it means that I can. It could make a difference in whether I revenge kill the Zygarde when it transfers to complete after going below 50%. Or if I just get swept by it. Also, instead of, I mentioned this, you can run instead of Earthquake, HP Ice and Surprise Dragons with it, especially with Intimidate. It does a lot of defense. You creep down and you run like Hasty Nature, I think. Yeah, plus please run as defense Hasty Nature. But this set's really nice in my opinion. You have Intimidate, you U-turn, you can pivot infinitely. You're very fast. Earthquake is very good stab, and it deals with Groudon as well, which I did need a Groudon check, did I not? Yep. So there's that. Even the Great Team checks it, having 2 checks is fine. This also gives me always an out against Marshadow, because I could click Boom, but not only that, I could continue to Intimidate and U-turn out on it, stuff like that. And pivot to my Ghost and my Landorus who resists fighting, etc, etc. Or pivot to something that like a Crosmo who doesn't care about fighting type moves or ice type moves if it's running Ice Punch. So there's also that. And it means that if I lose to Defogger, I could get rocks up again. So there's a lot there. I could run Defog if I wanted, but Giratina Orange is so good at it. I don't think you need 2 Defoggers ever. Unless you have Latias, who's not really a defogger. Let's talk about Latias real quick, just because I brought it up a couple times, and I want to talk about how cool this mod is. So Mega Latias exists because it's a defogger that checks Groudon. It's a dragon, so it doesn't care about fire stab or rock stab, and it has Levitate, so I think it's Giratina, right? So it just blanks. It blanks most Groudon sets. I mean, there's some that have, wow, English is difficult. There's some that have HP Ice, but that's rare. Oh, so you actually want Jacob here, I forgot. Tox to be Groudon the 1v1, and in your last move slot, this makes it interesting. I should mention that you're not looking at damage at all. Like, you're in Draco Beater because you have no attack investment at all. You're at 76 defense. This is just the remainder. It means you play 2 tank plus 2 Stone Edge. You need the speed to outspeed. Am I tripping? I put too much here. You outspeed 176 means that you hit 290. So you hit 300 flat. Sorry, and sorry, D76 here. The 4 is going into the death. So you outspeed all the 299s, which are the base 100s that don't have plus attack, plus speed nature. Sorry, you take your +2 stone edges, which are the base 90s that aren't invested. No, I meant base 100s. So like, it beats Groudon, it beats Kyogre, who are in base 90s, but also beats stuff like Rayquaza. Rayquaza's 90, Palkia's 100, I think. So it beats all of them. So there's that, right? And your last move is Healing Wish. If you haven't seen Healing Wish, whatever mon uses Healing Wish, it dies, HP goes to 0, and whoever switches it after it gets healed to full HP. What this set does is it allows you to use your setup sweeper like a wall breaker. It means that, oh, my Mega Lucario came with a set of Swords Dance, punched a hole in its Toxapex, punched a hole in its Arceus Water, and then got really hurt. But instead of sacking it, I switched it out. And later in the game, I was able to bring in Latias, do some work, defog, get rid of spikes, when the spikes hazards were, get rid of rocks, right? And then when Latias was in danger, I used Healing Wish. Before I died, which is the reason it's important to outspeed the crowded base 90 tier that I talked about. And whoever my Mega Lucario came back in. Sorry, not Mega Lucario is a bad example because you can't run double megas. It's not like a Marshadow, for instance, or a Ho-Oh, stuff like that. Who sweeps but takes a lot of damage, or just from chip, and especially Ho-Ohs, especially from chip. But in general, like a Zygarde complete. Oh, Zygarde complete is so powerful because. I'll talk about Zygarde, I guess, as well, because it's impossible to kind of. I want to make sure that you understand. Somebody who hasn't played the gen understands what I was talking about. Why Zygarde complete? It's important. I'll talk about that in a second. But all these mods who have done their job, because when you bring in your setup sweeper, people bring their checks in, and the check will eat the hit or will check it, etc. But after that, your check will usually check them on for one health bar. Like, it's not gonna check them on down to 1 HP and then check it again usually. So you get checked out to 1 HP. Switch out Latias comes in, does this defog thing, continues to check Groudon infinitely. Well, not infinitely, because it doesn't get recovered unless it's when recovering instead of Healing Wish, which I don't recommend. Or if you're doing Double Dance, probably Groudon specifically, like, there's a lot of good things like that. So, let's say, I was gonna pick them on. The Zygarde complete, right? The bulky boy. The reason I'm talking about it is because it can come in a certain mons that check Mega Latias. For instance, mons like Dialga, like Ho-Oh, like Diancie, stuff like that, stuff like Magearna, Yveltal. Those things come in on Mega Latias. Mega Latias could use Healing Wish, invite, for instance, Zygarde complete back in, heal it to full HP. Zygarde, it has like 700 HP now. And the thing that comes in on it is not a check. It was a Latias check, right? And the checks to Zygarde have been weakened by its first sweep. So now Zygarde just wins the game. So Latias, it's very niche. It's niche because it checks Groudon and it removes spikes. They can give it a super a second run. So there's that. So I just want to bring that up quickly. Since I brought up Zygarde, I just want to talk about it. So here's the thing about Zygarde. I'm just gonna say Ground DMZ because it's common. I'm fully convinced that Zygarde complete is one of the best mons in the tier. But it's obvious it's one of the best mons in the tier. But I think it's incredible. So here's the thing. Its ability, Power Construct, right? Zygarde 50%, by the way, is just base Zygarde. When it gets below 50%, it changes from this mon, which has pretty decent stats, 108 HP, 121 defense, 95 special defense, 95 speed's okay, 81 special attack, 100 attack, pretty decent stats, right? Change from this to Zygarde Complete, which has a whopping 216 attack stats, almost Blissey levels. So it gets like 630 HP. So the stats don't change, it gets a little slower, which is fine. Ground DMZ. First of all, you might say, so essentially, a 216 HP mon at half health, that's a base 108 HP mon. Almost, so it just gets it on the health bar. But it also gets moves like Rest. It gets Rest, like its Rest talk stat is very effective because of this move, 1000 Arrows. This is a move that has its base 90 stats is effective as Earthquake. Why would you run it, right? Here's the thing, ground type is not a type that's resisted. There's no ground type resists. The only thing that ground type loses to are flying type and levitate mounts. Now what 1000 Arrows does is it's a move that it hits flying types and levitate mounts, although flying type counts as a resist for the purposes of the move, and it grounds them like Roost does, or like Smackdown does, or Gravity or Iron Ball. It puts them on the ground. What this means is that with one move, Zygarde Complete hits every single mon in the game, bar Shedinja, or like Wonder Guard mons. Hits every single mon in the game for neutral damage at worst with one move.
What this is saying then is,
so that Ho-Oh that you thought was gonna
just as
be a problem because its team did not have any checks, having rock type moves, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
To grow and shape
because Ho-Oh's gonna get hit by 1000 Arrows and just die.
That doesn't
so
mean
this is not its most common set, right?
Equally.
Also in last move, if you're running Stall, you run Dragon Tail for phasing. You run Glare to spread paralysis, which is actually important because you can paralyze Groudon with this move. Because it's not an electric type move, it's a normal type move that paralyzes. So you can hit Groudon with it, for instance. You can.
That you aren't doing it in just the same way as you're breathing.
You could run.
How you breathe.
The last move you run is Toxic. That's what it is. You run Toxic in the last slot. And the reason you would Rest Talk is because you only did it once, but one time you started at 300. You went down to 1 HP. It's fine. You went down to, but now you have enough HP to tank a hit, and you hit up 636. You're doing so like this mod is with good prediction can end games, which is the reason I mentioned it in conjunction with Mega Latias. You compound an ice weakness, but it really doesn't matter if you play around it properly, because ice is not a common type in this tier, bar Kyogre Xerneas and the occasional converge move. You could also run this mod gets Dragon Dance. You could also run lefties, by the way. I should talk about that. You can run lefties. Because Dragon Dance, you can run Dragon Dance. You can run Sub. Since the main phasing, roll into roar.com in this tier. The main phasing move is Giratina Origins Dragon Tail. Phasing is not a thing that happens in this tier a lot. It's sub moves that you don't care about it. Also, you can use sub to help you get down to the trigger health behind the substitute. You run 1000 Arrows because it's mandatory. You run Dragon Tail. And this set will sweep you. I just want to talk about it real quick because I felt like it's important for me to understand why it's so. Mega Latias has such amazing comeback potential behind it. But let's talk about what my team needs. I lose to Stall with this team. Stall that Toxic Groudon and just wears on the cross, especially with burns. The Toxic Giratina, my team has a big status weakness. The Toxic Lando T. It's very difficult to beat Stall here. I don't really have a Stall breaker necessarily. But my next mon will provide the Stall breaking. And it's time for Yveltal, my favorite mon that's here, the reason I made this video. First, let's talk about Yveltal stats. Let's just take a moment to look at these beautiful, beautiful stats. Here's the thing. I know the stats. 126 HP is huge. 131 in both attack is huge. 95 defense is okay. 98 special defense is okay. 99 speed means you lose the base 100s. That's really all it means. But 131 on both stats with Dark Orb, it's essentially a Life Orb boost, a little bit more to Dark type moves. And it has dark type moves like Dark Pulse. It can run instead. It can have it gets dark type boost on Sucker Punch. It gets a dark type boost on Foul Play, which means that you don't need to. It means that you can do serious damage to physical teams without even running any attack investment because you use their attack stat. So there's that. Also, it's U-turn for utility. It's a really good Scarf user because of U-turn. It's a signature move is Oblivion Wing, which is an 80 base power special type move that heals you for 75% of your damage dealt, which is really good against offensive teams that you check. But it gives you a decent amount of healing against stall teams, which is important because you're a flying type, you take rocks damage pretty heavily. Its typing is pretty good. It could live like CB Bar Shadows close combat twice if it has lefties. It'll live Mega Mawile with the pure power, that one. It lives Mega Mawile with Play Rough, even though it's super effective. And it gets really good utility moves. This is why it's a good stall breaker, because the tried and tested combination of Taunt Toxic. You buy your mon that just wants to set Toxic in my face, or just wants to status me down, or just wants to defog, Taunt. Your Arceus Water just wants to wall me all day and never take damage, Toxic. It's beautiful. It also gets knockoff to remove lefties, to make sure things take really big damage. So you get the choice of Foul Play or knockoff. You could really run either. It gets defog if you need a defogger. Defog is really common in the tier. But you can run Roost instead. So you could like this is that I'm probably gonna run here. Taunt Tox, knockoff, Roost. And this, I mean, I'm actually on Foul Play, because my team, as it is, it's slow and offense and like it's very balanced, but it means that Foul Play, with Taunt Tox, I destroy all teams by itself, and Foul Play gives you an option that makes Evoltile not necessarily just fodder against offensive teams. So there's that. Roost also heals more than Oblivion Wing in 99% of situations, especially because I'm running tanky, so I'm not gonna have enough defense to make Oblivion Wing, or not enough special attack to make Oblivion Wing worth it. But you could run very good sets that are offensive. Like for instance, you've also have so many sets. I'm looking at my document real quick. Like you can run the Life Orb set. You go with Life Orb. You need Dark Pulse and Oblivion Wing, those you just have the choice. You run Taunt. You run Taunt Talk or Taunt Sucker Punch. You just go max modest, or mild, sorry, you don't run modest. Because, well, I mean, you can run modest if you're not running Sucker Punch. If you're running Sucker Punch, you want mild. So there's that. But then you could also run, like I talked about, it's a really good Scarf user. In Scarf, you still run Dark Pulse, Oblivion Ring, you also run Foul Play. You need both. And you can pick between U-turn and defog. I like U-turn much better. I don't like Evoltile as a defogger necessarily, because I think it does such good jobs in other ways. You run max speed, you go down to 224 at modest because you need defense CPs, and I put in attack full Iron Man shoes. You need the defense CPs to survive Ultra Necrozma Stone Edge if you're at 100% HP, which allows you to hit it with Dark Pulse and Oko it back. Or hit it with Foul Play and Oko it back, because it's physically offensive Ultra Necrozma. So there's this set, right? Foul Play destroys, like I said, Necrozma destroys Necrozma DM, destroys Lucario, Primal Groudon, hits like a truck. Hits Ho-Oh, Mewtwo Y, hits physical Kyogre. Actually, it's all Kyogre, harder than Dark Pulse. And destroys SD Arceus sets. So there's that. This is that you can run. You can run the same set I was running, but if you're not running, you can run something like this is the same set I was running. Toxic, Taunt, Roost. But in this case, you run 248 here. Odd number, we talked about this. You run leftovers. I think some people run Charty Berry so you don't get destroyed by Stone Edge, but I left leftovers and just play around it. It's kind of troll though. Just play around it, I mean that's kind of the name of the game, isn't it? You run Timid with 184 speed. Because 308, you beat all the 306 you beat all the 306 mons that are base 90 plus speed. Like Groudon and Kyogre that are fast. It means you can taunt Toxel down. Or like Rayquaza, you can taunt and prevent it from Dragon Dancing. Stuff like that. It's crazy that Rayquaza's that slow. And you put the 76 on special defense because you like that's just leftover. Oh, it also means that it's the leftover, but also works out really well. I actually like how it works out. 248 HP and 76 special defense. It means that you destroy support Arceus sets, and this is designed to stall break. Support Arceus sets usually run like Toxic, you throw in Defog or Rocks. They run Recover, and their last move is Ice Beam. To hit Groudon, like stuff like Arceus Rock and Arceus Water, who can't hit Groudon with their judgments, and usually when leftovers overplay anyway. And Ice Beam will not 4 hit KO if you have 76 special defense and 248 HP. The numbers just work out beautifully that way. If you really want to deal with just stall, and you can give up a little bit of your HP and run Dreadplate, which would reduce your ability to tank over the course of the game, but it would be that you 2KO Mega Sableye, which was like the linchpin and the lead and the late game and the mid game and the alpha and omega of stall teams and Ubers. You 2KO with Foul Play or Dark Pulse, specifically Foul Play. I think Foul Play does more. No, Dark Pulse does more in that situation. So there's that, but I don't necessarily need to break stall that hard, so I would run lefties in this situation. You can run like a max defensive set, which is also really sick. With this same set, you could switch it for Defog or Sucker Punch or something like that. You can run Dreadplate again if you wanted, but leftovers is really good. If you're going physical defense, you kind of need Charty Berry, because otherwise the main physical hit in this game is like from Groudon or the Crossbow Duskmane Stone Edges, right? The Foul Play means that since you're physically defensive, you clear down to 80 speed, I think. Yeah, 80 speed. And you go Impish. This is the speed that beats Ultra Necrozma Duskmane. Talk about it's important. No speed if you put all of it in defense. This set will OHKO with Foul Play on Necrozma Duskmane or Groudon and stuff like that. And will not get killed in return. Did I say Impish? Actually, you run Bold because neither affects your damage, but Bold means you take less damage from other Foul Play from style teams and also Confusion. So Bold is actually better, unless you run Sucker Punch, in which case you need the little bit of attack you run Impish. You can even run Specs on this because he has 131 special. So you run Specs and you just go 4 attacks out. Dark Pulse, Oblivion Wing, you turn to maintain momentum and in bad matchups you run Heat Wave. And you go max Timid. Max, that's not max. And you could run Modest. I think it would disappoint BKC if I ran Timid over Modest on a Specs mod, but Timid's also very useful. Because feature below is kind of crowded. I don't know. I like to have the safety, but you can instead run Modest, and you'll lose to the base 90s that are at 299, and the ones that go up to 306. But you'll hit harder. You'll like 2KO like support Arceus forms, and like if you run Focus Blast instead, you can OHKO normal Arceus, Steel Arceus, Rock Arceus. But I prefer Timid personally. You want Heat Wave because it deals with Steel type moves, Magearna, Klefki, Ferrothorn. It'll go Scissor and Ferrothorn. Who otherwise blank, those are the two moves. So there's that. And it has 131 in both defenses. So you could just run Band instead. You just switch this for some this. You go Adamant or Jolly. Prefer Jolly. It's a shame. And you want to knock off Foul Play, which actually gets Choice Band boost, which is incredible. And you run Sucker Punch or Toxic. You just go all in on your physical, on your Dark type moves, because Dark Aura boosts them. You also get boosted by the Foul Play gets boosted by Dark Aura, by the way, which is insane. Knockoff, you can't run just knockoff because many monsters that's here, Mega Salamence, Solganium, Xenocrozma, Primal Kyogre, Primal Groudon, Giratina Origin, they all have items that are irremovable, so you can't knock them off. So Foul Play does more damage to them. Also means that stuff like Extreme Speed, Arceus, and if Necrozma, Despia, or Groudon have a boost already from like Swords Dance, you hit them even harder. And you're fast enough to hit them before they hit you. U-Turn is beautiful and destroys Tukale's Tyranitar, which exists in this tier as a Pursuit Chopper, and also Source of Sand. Although Sand is not useful because you can't switch in and remove. It's difficult to sit for Sand to stay up because it lasts 5 turns and not until you switch out. Whereas the other weathers from Ground and Kyogre last until you switch out. You can also toss it as a Sucker Punch to beat like Arceus Water and stuff. It's not necessary. So yeah, Yveltal does it all. I'm gonna stick with the Stall Break set. Foul Play, Taunt, Toxic, Boost, 184 speed, I think 184 plus, 76 special defense, the rest here. Shooting Timid instead. Man's attack to prevent foul play, damage, and confusion, which is you'll see a lot on stall teams, especially Sableye likes to run Confuse Ray and foul play, or Swagger as well. So this helps to reduce that. Now, a lot of the weaknesses that my later mons have been shored up by the first couple mons. Like Lando T loses to Yveltal. If you felt like if you had to boom it, I'm forced to boom it or just lose to it because of Ice Beam. Although some Yveltal will carry it. For instance, Scarf Yveltal runs Aromatherapy, Moonblast, Thunder, Focus Blast, and is thus blanked by, or is checked by Lando. Geomancy was Geomancy, Moonblast, Thunder, Focus Blast, or Ice Beam. Or I think also maybe runs a fire move, Hidden Power Fire. But if it has Ice Beam, Lando loses to it. Same thing with Gengar that runs Ice Stab. Lando also has problems dealing with well, the set that it has EQ and EQ turn boom. It doesn't have Stone or anything like that, or HP Ice. Has problems dealing with dragons. But both of these are shored up by Groudon and Crossbow. They both counter. Between the two of them, they'll destroy Xerneas and they take a lot of pressure off each other. And Crossbow Dustman also deals with dragons with the Stone Edge set that I'm running, and this physically defensive EVs, stuff like that. Slime mons are covering for each other. Also, a lot of my mons are weak to Toxic, which is why their Cosmo is very important on this tier, on this team. And which is why I have a defensive one who doesn't care about being burned necessarily as much, because he really is here to soak status and scare out fairies, and he'll do that adequately either way. He also doesn't care about being thunder waved as much, especially. Another issue is that my team gets shipped down and needs a good defogger, which is what Giratina is here. And Giratina, things Giratina loses to are covered by Lando T, stuff like that. One thing my team needs is a setup sweeper, and I have a bit of free freedom with my setup sweeper because I handle Groudon so well with Giratina and Landorus and my own Groudon, which is defensive. I should say defensive. It has significant HP investment. So I actually do well against hazards on the whole. I can play on hazards very well when the hazard war with pretty good consistency, and thus I am allowed to pick a setup sweeper that has issues with hazards. And the one I'm picking is Ho-Oh. Now you might be saying, if you haven't played Ho-Oh, Ho-Oh doesn't look like a setup sweeper. It also doesn't look like a physical attacker. But here we are. I'm gonna be running Curse Ho-Oh. Curse Ho-Oh is so sick. Like, I actually really like Curse Ho-Oh. It fodder, like, cause Ho-Oh has a really high. First of all, Ho-Oh has really good resistances. It has a fire resistance, steel resistance, fairy resistance, and it has a ground immunity. So it comes in on a lot of the metagame. And has 106 HP and a really good special defense stat. So the fairy type moves that, you know, from Yveltal, fire type moves are mostly special from Groudon, stuff like that. So let's it come in a lot of stuff, force it out. If probably Groudon doesn't carry Stone Edge, this is a lot of reason that Groudon always has Stone Edge, because otherwise Ho-Oh beats it. Stuff like that. It also has 130 attack, which is a lot, and a really good stab combination of Brave Bird and Sacred Fire, which has a 50% burn chance and 100 base power. It's an incredibly strong move. Now, especially behind a Life Orb, this does damage. You could also Flanium Z with the Curse set and turn Brave Bird into a nuke. But Life Orb is like consistent damage throughout the set, and I want to have the ability to always use the Cosmo Z move. For the ability to hit Marshadow, etc. So I don't want to double up. Sometimes you double up to give yourself the choice. It also protects both monsters from knockoff, etc, etc. But I like a Life Orb here. You might be saying, that's a lot of residual damage for a mon that takes 50% from Stealth Rocks. And you're right. Now, we take Recover. We take Recover over Roost. This is important, because Recover Ho-Oh beats Groudon without Stone Edge. Roost Ho-Oh loses to Groudon without Stone Edge, because Precipice Blades will hit you on the ground. This is part of the reason. And we also have Regenerator. Regenerator heals 1/3 of your life rounded down when you switch out, right? So between this and this, it allows you to come in, blow something up, recover if you need to. You need to take a hit while you're recovering, and switch out. I just pivot and pivot and pivot. Now this playstyle is only enabled if you give it a Spikes, because I take, Spikes, Stealth Rock. I take half my life off Stealth Rock, right? So I can't do what I need to do in the situation. But once rocks are down, you come in on something that you force out, or you double properly, and if your checks are gone, you take a curse, take 2 curses, your defense stats, you'll show up your kind of meager defense stat. After 2 boosts, you're already like, after 1 boost, you're almost at your special defense stat. You're at like 324. That's without investment, of course. So like, and the speed is not important, especially if you're running low speed or minus speed nature, which I do both. It's actually, I don't run minus speed here because it's actually useful to outspeed base 90s before the curse. Uninvested base 90s like Groudon. And I still use speed time with defensive Groudon and put myself at risk to get toxic before I get anything off, etc, etc. So you run neutral base 90. But yeah, you get 1 good swap in, you curse up. It's really hard to kill Ho-Oh without Rock Stab. And my team is really good at, especially with Yveltal, stuff like that, at baiting Rockstab in and punishing it. Scarflando T with Earthquake, stuff like that. And really, there's very few mons that really hit with Rockstab. It's Excadrill Suicide Lead, Primal Groudon, it's the Necrozma Dustmane, and Ultra Necrozma if it's physical Ultra Necrozma. And Marshadow with Rock Tomb, and that's really it. Like, there's a couple other mons that might use it for coverage, etc., right? But those mons are very high profile mons, and which will come in a lot and will be checked a lot. And Curse Hole is not the most common hole set. I promise you. So it's very feasible that by the time Hole comes in looking to sweep at the end of the game, the checks that you need are already down. They've been worn down to the point where you can kill them on the swap. If you have a couple of defense boosts, you'll survive. Rock Tomb from Marshadow, for instance, if it's Choice Band Marshadow. So this is actually really capable mon once Stealth Rock is gone. To this point, it's important that when you play this team, you preserve Guaranteed as health until you are sure you've scouted out all the rock setters. It's also important that I play the hazard game really hard with 2 rock setters because I want to force their defogger as many times as possible. If I set my rock and their defogger comes in, they give it to their rocks too, don't forget, right? And their rock, the Stealth Rock has to come back in, or they have to live with the fact that they don't have rocks anymore. And so I could, by setting rocks continuously, I can force them to clear their rocks until they've cleared both my rock setters, or unless I've cleared their one rock setter first, which is more likely, right? And so it's very feasible that hazards will be down by some holes looking to sweep. This combination is very, very good and it works in games. You run 248 HP. Why run 248 HP? It's a couple things. It puts you at 415 HP instead of 416. So if at 415 HP, you will take 208 damage from spikes because it rounds. You take 207 HP from spikes because it rounds down. At 416, you take 208. In both cases, you go down to 208 HP, but the 208 HP from the 248 set, because I'll let's put the rest. Because I'll have 8 in a defense or 8 in special defense, that 208 will be worth more. I'll be healthier for what it's worth, right? It also means that since recover rounds up, I heal 208 in both situations. Which means that I'll actually heal slightly more than 50% of my HP, and my HP is worth more. Since it's divisible by 3 and it rounds down, in both 415 and 416 I both heal 138 HP, but the 138 HP is worth more with a little bit of defense investment, a little bit of def investment. So it's very useful to run odd number HP. I think take damage from spikes and damage from Stealth Rock, which is 50% of your HP rounded down. You run Adamant. You could run Brave Nature if you wanted to, but I think it's important to be Groudon before the first curse. Defensive Groudon. Offensive Groudon is gonna just eat a Brave Bird and explode if it's not carrying Stone Edge. If it's carrying Stone Edge, you should have scouted that way beforehand. There's no phasing in this shit. The phasing is Giratina's Dragon Tail and that's it, or Zygarde's Dragon Tail and that's it. Aztec Adamant means that after rocks, you're capable of OHKOing stuff like Calm Mind, Kyogre from full HP. So this is really the team. It's a balanced team. You have double rock setters. You're designed to play the game kind of slow. It beats hyper offensive physical teams that have Lucario or Salamence as their Shadow Sweeper. Lucario doesn't like Guaranteed Origin at all. It doesn't like Lando Tiro. It doesn't like Groudon either, to be honest. And Mence doesn't like physically defensive to cross, but all it like Lando. It doesn't like it doesn't like Groudon either. Now I think about it, because Overheat puts it in range to get killed. Next time it switches in, forces it to roost up, and roost gets hit by Pressy Blades. So hyper offensive physical teams actually get dealt with pretty well. Hyper offensive special teams that run Calm Mind Kyogre and Geomancy Xerneas get destroyed on my team because Groudon will always check Kyogre by switching into it. I also check Xerneas by itself, which is the reason it's the best one in this tier. And I also have Giratina to continue to play that role. Xerneas also gets blanked by the crossbow that's made even though investment, because HP Fire doesn't do damage even after Geomancy. So its best option is to hit you with Focus Blast, which is a neutral hit, and you're pretty defensive. And I have max HP anyway. Against other balanced teams, I mean, balanced teams look something like this. So we'll see, but deal with a lot of the mods that are linchpins on those teams. Deal with Groudon is easily, for instance, between my own Necrozma that'll beat sets that are defensive, especially if it's a Stone Edge set and not a Fire Stab set, because I have the defense to survive Earth Stab. Lando T will also do very well against it, and Giratina is designed to check Pummel Groudon. I have double toxic support as well to chip through Groudon. Zygarde complete and Rayquaza loose on my team. Rayquaza just eats a Stone Edge and dies. Zygarde complete will get toxic down. It'll get boomed on, which the boom is very useful for Zygarde complete because Zygarde complete needs to be revenge killed. If you Zygarde complete live, chances are, depending on the set, it'll have sub to protect itself and lefties up because its subs have like 163 HP each. Is that correct? Something like no. Yeah, 163 HP each. 100. Math is difficult. 159 HP each. Sorry, at max investment, which means they survive as it tosses easy and stuff like that. If sub lets the lefties up, it can have wish support from clerics, which is mostly Chansey Bussy in this tier. Healing wish from Latias, rest, sleep talk. All these are options. So Zygarde complete, booming and revenge killing, it's a very good way of dealing with it. In terms of stall teams, stuff like Chansey Blissey gets to show up at Tontox setup. Toxapex doesn't want to eat too many Pressy Blades anyway. I have default support from a mon that levitates over Toxic Spikes. So I'm very set up to deal with that. Arceus forms can get boomed on. Also Tontox is disgusting combo for this. I have Toxic, I have Burn Chance from Ho-Oh, I also have Thunder Wave on Giratina, which means Hexes will start hitting every mod that's left that resists all three of those, right? So I'm very well equipped on all sides to deal with the majority of the metagame. So this is how I would build a team. This team actually worked for me very effectively. I wish I had a replay to show you, but SM and Ubers is kind of ghost town recently, and I don't have. At the time I was playing Showdown on my phone, and I was a part of the community as a whole. I didn't want to smoke it at all, and so I wasn't in the habit of recording anything. Not even my ELO, which is a shame because he goes to show off 1471, 1480, or 1500 at this time would kind of add some credibility, but hopefully I was methodical enough that you kind of understood that I knew where I was coming from. I'll try to do this game with a different team. Maybe I'll pick a more specially. This team is a very physical team. It just happens to have Giratina on it to break physical walls. But hopefully I'll try to go with a more specially oriented team in the future. But if you watch this almost 2-hour long video, I thank you so much because this is actually a lot of fun to write up a script for and remember and get back into my notes, because I used to take notes about sprints and everything. So yeah, it's a lot of fun for me to make. If it's interesting, let me know. If I can fix it in a different way to make it more interesting, just let me know how I can improve it. Or if I'm talking too fast, or if I'm not completely audible at all times with those background noise because I live in New York City. These are all things that I can try to do something to mitigate, so let me know if any of this is problematic. But failing that, I'm gonna head out. Thank you so much if you actually watched this to the end. But here we have a build team. I just want to mention that normally I would not take 2 hours to build a team, but actually writing the script for this, which included the whole team being built, took me about 20 minutes. But just in terms of describing everything and making sure that I was describing it in the way that somebody who's played other gens but hasn't played Gen 7 might understand the meta, took me a little longer to explain. So thank you.